Hello and welcome to Awakened with Lea, the next chapter. I'm your host, Lea, and this show is about bringing to the forefront diverse guests who have experienced adversity and major or minor transitions in life so that we can provide our viewers with courage, confidence, and tangible tools to navigate any challenge in life with the lived experience and wisdom of our guests. Hello and welcome to Awakened with Lea, the next chapter. My name is Lea and I am your host today, and I am very excited to introduce Molly Snider to the show. Hello, Molly. Thank you for being here. Molly is the founder of Molly Elizabeth, and you are a spiritual coach and you do shadow work as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you and welcome. And I want to thank you for your courage to be here and to share your experiences with us in hopes to bring more support to others. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So can you share with us any adversity or challenge that you experienced that deeply shaped who you are today?
Big question. Let's lead with that. So as a child, I grew up in an emotionally abusive home. My mom was very codependent, very textbook codependent. She always kind of molded herself to be who she needed to be loved and accepted, especially with her partners. My birth father was abusive towards her, physically, emotionally, sexually, all the things. And my older brother kind of shielded me from some of that, and or my brain has blocked out a lot of memories. So they ended up getting divorced when I was 6 years old, and she met my stepdad soon after. And financially, he provided us a life that we otherwise couldn't have afforded. I remember him bringing home like oodles of groceries for the first time, and we weren't used to having that much food. And then we moved into this big house with a big backyard, a tire swing. So on the outside, everything seemed great. Everything looked great. And that's kind of what was ingrained in me from an early age. If everything looks good on the outside, then everything's okay. As long as people think that we are happy, then that's what matters. So, growing up, he was very critical. That's how it started. And as I got older, it began with the push pull of a narcissist type of love, very conditional. If you don't do this way, then I'm going to ignore you for 2 weeks. So a lot of me begging and trying to win his affection and love. So I carried that into my personal relationships. And any guy that I was with, I, like my mother, would kind of shift and mold into a chameleon, let me jump through all these hoops so that you think I'm worthy of love, all the while in my heart and in my head, not feeling worthy. It was a constant race. And so I met my ex-husband, and that was like the monumental relationship, where I would learn all my karmic lessons with that stuff. He treated me exactly how my stepdad treated me. I talk a lot about this in my work about repeating trauma cycles until we like learn the lesson. So with him, it was very emotionally, psychologically abusive, verbally abusive, sexually abusive. So I wanted to talk about me being an alcoholic somewhere in there. So back before I met my ex-husband, I became an alcoholic. I found alcohol. It was very freeing. I didn't have to be any certain person anymore. It lowered my inhibitions, as it's known to. And drugs, all the things, anything I could get my hands on, to numb the feeling of I'm unworthy, I'm not enough. So it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I met my ex-husband, and it became an issue in our relationship. So I finally ended up going to a 12-step program. And there I got sober August 29th of 2016. And I've been sober since then. And I started to shift into what I now am, like learning that I'm worthy without any jumping through hoops. And I started learning about codependency. I started learning about trauma in those rooms, and with the people there just showing me unconditional love. I could show up any sort of way, sad, crying, rolled out of bed, angry, and I was accepted. So that's where I really started to see the sort of love that, some people get on a daily basis. And it was crazy to me at first. And now, like, I don't even know how I lived without it.
Yeah, like what is unconditional love? For many of us,
Yes.
we've never experienced it. And, it's very common that we end up repeating exactly what was shown to us. And we fall into coping mechanisms the best, we do the best that we can in the moment, and we can't change what we don't know. And if we don't have any coping mechanisms, then it's very common to fall into addiction as a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no judgment there, because it's about doing the best you can to survive. And a lot of us are taught, don't feel your emotions, don't express your emotions. And what I've learned, over many years is the exact opposite. Lean into your emotions, because those are the clues of, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And making a conscious choice of how we want to proceed forward. So, and when we feel judged, we don't really want to come out of that shell and surrender and be willing to even hear a different perspective, that there could be other coping mechanisms, and that all these beliefs that we've adopted over time, that they may not actually be true. And so breaking that cycle, sometimes we, hitting rock bottom, or, coming from a place of disparity, is necessary in order to be willing to be open and enough to just sort of like crawl out of our comfort zone, yeah. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's beautiful that you said that, because that's kind of where shadow work comes in with my business. Like, it's acknowledging that that feeling and the cycle. And even though it's uncomfortable at first, like trying to learn how to shift out of that. So yeah, absolutely. The pain, it's painful, going through that cycle, but it's familiar pain. So we continue to do it until we know.
Yes, absolutely. I find that the desire needs to be stronger than the fear of stepping out of our comfort zone. And that might take a while, but sometimes we do need a lot of experiences that we are not so happy in the moment for, but we get to learn so much about ourselves, what we want and what we don't want, what's true versus the truth. And they are actually gifts, our experiences, and we get to choose, which ones are serving us and which ones are limiting us.
Absolutely. I'd say my biggest awakening on that front was my mom passed away 3 years ago. And she was my best friend, despite all the codependency, despite, her letting my stepdad, I had to get over all of that in my 12 steps. But she was always my biggest supporter. She always knew I was going to do great things, that I was going to help other people. And when she passed away, I kind of had to take a step back and look at my relationship with my husband at the time and her relationship with my stepdad. And it was a mirror, and I had to ask myself, like, is this really the way I want to live the next 25, 30, 50 years, And the answer was no. And that was so scary to me. I felt, of course, that conditioning of you can't get a divorce, unless this, and this happened, or, the public shame. I say quote shame because it's not really, we're judging ourselves based on what our conditioning was and our programming. So yeah, that ended up leading me to getting a divorce and then having another awakening, that I am worthy just as I am. I don't have to have anybody tell me that I'm beautiful or that I deserve love. It all comes within here.
Absolutely. It all starts within. And when we're in good relationship with ourselves, that does play out in all of our other relationships. So what beliefs did you have to shift in order to help you move forward?
Oh gosh. Definitely that I'm not worthy, because I am, and that I'm deserving of anything my heart desires. I've had to shift a lot of programming about my business in particular because it's intuitively led. I grew up, you get married, you graduate high school, you get married, you find a good job, and I did. I've been a nurse for 12 years, an ICU nurse, and I did that part. And while it has been fulfilling, like as I grow, everything else does too, So I've had to shift out of like, I can own my own business. I can put my story out there. I can talk about my abusers. This is the first time I've publicly talked about like who my abusers were. I've said my marriage or growing up, but I've never gone like this specific, and I had to shift out of the people pleasing, the trying to protect their reputation, because if they wanted their reputation protected, then they should have done better. I'm not here to bash them at all because I've used that to make myself more powerful. Um, but my story deserves to be told, and I can help other women in doing so.
Yeah, it sounds like you're leading from love and from a place of self-compassion in order to show others that there is that other side of, from the darkness or hopelessness that they may be feeling. Because when you're in the moment of going through those type of experiences, sometimes we don't see a way out and we don't believe that there could be another way. And when we don't believe something is possible, then it's not possible. So it's about shifting our beliefs and making the desire stronger than the what's not visible right now, that which in this case would be the belief. And I honor you for being so vulnerable with us in hopes to help others. So that brings me to, how did acceptance play a role in your healing?
Oh, it was a huge part. Acceptance is what shifted me out of being a victim, for so long. I blamed my stepdad for the longest time, for creating this mess. And he's why I feel this way about myself, which that was the catalyst, But as long as I stayed in victimhood, there was no growth. So I had to accept that he did the best that he could. My mom did the best that she could. My ex-husband did the best that he could at the time, and I hear that he's grown since I left as far as that goes. So I had to hit a point where I just accept them for who they are and the situation for how it was supposed to be. now looking back, I see if I hadn't gone through all that, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be able to help so many women find their power.
And that's a very important point. It's having compassion for not only for ourselves but for others, knowing that we are all doing the best that we can with what we know. And we can't change what we don't know. So it's about that part is of acceptance. And it, I often talk about the energy behind our thoughts. And so it sounds like you've raised your energy from being a victim to your circumstances to being angry and resentful and feeling all the shame and guilt to taking ownership. But you've even raised the bar further, because a lot of times what happens is we end up being caregivers for other, protecting them, like you had said. And what happens is a lot of times we are caregivers because it's like we need to take care of someone else to fill a void within ourselves. So I need you to fulfill me. And then once those stories are removed and we are not sitting in blame and we understand that everybody's doing the best that they can, combined with taking ownership, we reach an energy level where it's more about curiosity, and it's what's the opportunity here? What can I learn? And then we even raise the bar further, which is, it sounds like this is the business that you're in, that everything is synchronistic. We trust in the process. Our intuition comes alive. And yeah, if you could talk a little bit more to that, because it sounds like you've definitely raised the energy behind your thoughts and emotions to reach that stage of your business.
Absolutely. So, of course, the world is a mirror for us. And a lot of women that I worked with, even in my 12-step program, would come to me for help. And it ends up like they had the same exact issues that I had had, so I could tell them about my experience and here's what I did, and just be there for them. And it kind of turned into, I started doing tarot and learning to lean into my intuition. So getting less out of my head and into my heart, feeling the messages, feeling what these women need to hear. And I went on a retreat last year in August. It's like a spiritual goddess retreat, was basically what it was. And really connected with the coach that was putting that on. And she became my coach soon after. As soon as I got home, I opened my little online business for tarot, and it hasn't even been a year, and it's evolved into spiritual coaching. And now me and her do the retreats together. And now I'm just putting out my first program. I just started talking about it last week. So it's been a whirlwind. But if I just keep being in flow, as stuff comes up, I deal with it. If I feel tired for the day, I take rest, I listen to what I need. Because if I'm not taking care of me, like, there's no way that this business is going to succeed. So yeah, it's just about paying attention to how I feel. And a lot of messages that I write on Facebook are intuitive. It's like I can connect to somebody's energy and know what they're feeling and what they're going through. And then it just flows out based on my own experience, really.
Yeah, and it's about not looking at yourself as being selfish, but you have the self-compassion to take care of yourself so that you can be there for others as well. And I love the fact that you hold the space for others, to unconditionally be there for them while they express the same that you've been through, or similar, because most often is people fear discussing it because they fear they're going to be judged. They don't, even if they do speak, they do not feel heard or seen. So being able to provide that space for someone is a big deal. it's a really big deal because so many people out there are still in a space of fear, and it's completely understandable because they may think that history is going to repeat itself, where they share their experience with someone, and that space is not as sacred as they thought it was. So it's really awesome for people to know that they can try again, and there are people out there that will hold that space for them. And typically, the ones with personal experiences, myself included, we get it. We totally get it. And that's what makes us different.
Yes, absolutely. I've had women tell me that, that, oh my gosh, like you just understand. And really all I'm doing is listening, and sharing what I've been through for them. I'm being the example of vulnerability. That's why I do choose to talk about my past and share my story, because if I am not vulnerable, how do I expect them to be, And if you're not vulnerable, it's harder to grow. If you can't be honest about what you're going through, how can you reach a solution?
It's almost exciting to say, be vulnerable and you're going to grow. And it's true. It sounds scary, but what happens after we open up and we start that healing process by getting rid of all those stories we've been telling ourselves, or unconditioning ourselves from all the influences that we've had for so many years, it's magical. It's really magical to get rid of all those stories, be in that acceptance space, and then we're able to step forward in action consciously. We make conscious choices. So we're not reacting to circumstances. We are responding to circumstances, and we have better tools for coping. And that, we have many different tools because, what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. And it's about building on those tools, and each day we learn something new, we practice it, and we grow. So it's not even a destination that we're getting to. It's a continuous journey of growth. And it's such a powerful place, which is why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about it, because when you're on the other side of it, you don't see that. And so allowing somebody in to believe in you before you believe in yourself, so that you can see that light shining and you could blossom into that butterfly, for however long you've been cocooning. I feel it deep into my heart. And it's like you said, you moved away from your head and you went to your heart. And these are powerful messages for those who don't believe yet that there is another side.
Absolutely. A lot of people are scared of shadow work, when I first start talking about it. And it's how I describe it is finding the dark parts of ourselves and bringing them back to the light. So it's just learning how to love ourselves whole as we are, because we all have shadows. There's not one person out there that doesn't have some sort of traumatic experience, and it still plays in the background and becomes conditioning and our reactions to situations. So yeah, that's really what it's all based on.
And goes back to, we think the grass is greener on the other side, because a lot of people are able to show up looking the part. Like you said, if everything looks good on the outside, then everything's okay on the inside. So look at that as whoever you're looking at might look like they have it all together, but we have no idea what's happening within. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good point to make to say to others for us to look within, not look at anybody else, but for us to look within and take those steps forward. And talking about taking steps forward, what fears did you need to break through in order to take action?
Are you talking about my business or just action in my own life?
For your personal growth.
Okay. Action was definitely part of the acceptance. I had to get rid of my resentments. And part of the 12-step program is making amends with others for our part. It makes it into, how do I say this? Kind of the same thing I was talking about earlier with the victimhood. It gets me out of what they did to me and then looking at my part in the situation. Because any type of conflict, it involves two people. We both have a part. So I actually made amends with my stepdad and with my ex-husband and, multiple other people, but those were the big ones. And because I was another part in that situation. And there were times where I reacted, out of my feelings and my conditioning. So, and not by any means am I perfect today. My ego still shows up and I have to make amends with people on a daily basis sometimes, when I'm going through something. But it's about showing up for myself and doing the next right thing. If I know I'm supposed to do something, showing up, doing it, not chickening out. And any type of negative emotion, just constantly ask why. That's my biggest action now is why. Why do I feel this way? Or why did I do that? And kind of getting to the bottom of it so I can understand me a little better.
So it sounds like you've given yourself permission to take imperfect action because it's really what's aligned with you, not so much about perfect. You've been there, done that, and look how that turned out, right? So it's about for all of us, but it's allowing yourself, giving yourself that permission to be the best version that you can be in this moment, and it's not about perfection.
No, none of us can be perfect. We're human.
No, and I think perfectionism is definitely tied into fear.
Mm-hmm.
Same with procrastination. So and I bring that up because knowledge is potential power. And so when we start, gaining awareness of all of these things like we're sharing today, it allows us to move into acceptance. And I love what you said with the 12-step program is that it provides us to look within and, our part. What was our part? Because we are so in that space of I did this because you did this. I did this because you, and we can't see past it. So part of the 12 steps, it does give you the opportunity in a safe space to say, wow, okay. And that's again, raising the bar on the energy behind our thoughts and emotions where we do start to take ownership and then we do make amends. And it's a daily reprieve. Like it's, every single day we show up the best we can. We learn from today for tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. All we have is today. If I get anxious, I know that I'm thinking about the future. If I get sad, it's usually because I'm thinking about the past. If I do my best to stay in the now, which is really all we have, I'm usually pretty peaceful.
Yeah, and I always say the future hasn't happened yet, so we might as well just stay in the present moment and we wouldn't have anything to fear. And as far as looking into the past, the greatest parts of looking at the past for me is looking at strengths that I had that I didn't acknowledge or validate and just sort of swept them under the carpet, that I could use that now. Experiences that were really, really hard in that moment, yet taught me so much. So I choose to bring those things into my present moment, which will allow me to step into the best version of myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of times we look back at the past and just think about the negative parts. But if you really examine the us that we are today, was in there all along. We just were covering it up with all the mess, you know? And once you start to clear the mess, then you see, like, oh, this is what I've always been. I just didn't see it.
What would you say it was the most significant lesson that you learned, and what message could you share with us?
The most significant lesson, that's a hard one to pick. Definitely
You could pick
to
a
be more
few.
general.
You could pick a few.
Um, would just be that I am worthy. Anything my heart desires, that those desires, those goals, those dreams, they're all there for a reason. And we can choose to ignore them and fear them, or we can step into loving ourselves and just showing up as we are. Just being yourself. That's a huge one. You don't have to be anybody else, and you can't be anybody else. And as long as you're trying to be anybody but you, you're going to feel like you're less than or you're not good enough. Um,
Can you share an example of what is one thing that anybody could do to start that process of being yourself?
I'd say definitely working on acceptance. As we talked about earlier, you know, accepting yourself exactly as you are, exactly how you're supposed to be in whatever moment it is, you know, accepting that you were supposed to go through all these things in order to become who you are today. Um, yeah, that's a big one,
Yeah,
acceptance.
I agree. And it speaks to that we are not our beliefs. And it's by getting rid of all those stories we've been telling ourselves for years, that is the acceptance. So it's really, we can find evidence for our beliefs. So we can shift our beliefs into it possibly being something other than we've been believing for years. And that to me would be the beginning stages of acceptance, when we do start to look for evidence against those beliefs, and really welcoming different stories. Um, and and the acceptance piece, I want everybody to know that it's a process. It takes time. It's not a cookie cutter overnight. Oh, I found evidence that this belief was false. But it's working with somebody to help, hold your hand, guide you through the limited beliefs, the assumptions we've been making for years. And it's and that inner critic, the stories that we made up was because of these beliefs that we think we're not enough. So and again, whatever we believe, we find evidence for it. So it starting that baby step of creating the awareness, and then that next step is we actually gain confidence when we're slowly and allowing ourselves to start to believe something other than we've been believing, and really replacing doubt with belief, at least
Yes.
for starters, because eventually we end up really walking into our own. We walk into our power. We stop giving our power away.
Yes. I tell some of my clients that struggle with like the negative self talk or the negative beliefs about themselves. Like anytime they have a negative self-talk experience, even if you don't even say it out loud, take a second and replace that with 3 different things that you love about yourself. And eventually you're going to get tired of having to do that. So you're just going to start thinking positively about yourself.
I love that. That's a great takeaway. That is phenomenal. It's and you're right. It's, a lot of times it's just second nature to focus on the negative things, but at the end of the day, if you look at 3 things that went well today, or 3 things that you're grateful for, you bring more positivity in your life on a daily basis, and it's cumulative. So it really does add up. And then what happens is you find that you're not sitting in that negative space as long as you used to, because you're looking for a better feeling. And it's always like, go for the feeling, not for the manifestation of something that you want, whether it's the money or the lover or, in your business. It's go for the feeling and enjoy the journey.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. Very, very powerful messages, and I really appreciate it. And I would love to have you back on the show again one day.
I would love that. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Leah.
My pleasure. And to all my viewers, thank you so much for being here and allowing us to share your space with us. Thank you.